Where do I fall short when it comes to being emotionally stable for other people? What can I do to improve it? What amends do I need to make with other people that I've been short with? And what specifically can I do today and moving forward to ensure that when things come up in life that are frustrating and challenging for me, I don't lose my cool and turn into a prepubescent little boy, but I maintain my frame as a man and I address what problems need to be addressed and I help other people get through and navigate their own challenges and hardship. That's what we should be doing as men. Men, welcome to the Order of Man podcast. I am Ryan Michler, but more importantly than that, I am the founder of Order of Man. And this movement, this mission is to reclaim and restore masculinity in a society that is continually dismissive of it. We see it at every echelon of leadership, from local leadership to the entertainment world, to political pundits, to politicians, attempting to change what it means to be a man and attempting to make us more passive and docile. I can't believe I'm saying this, that the idea of reclaiming, restoring masculinity is more relevant than it was when I started saying this 9-10 years ago. And I think there's a big push to quote unquote redefine masculinity. And I'm here to tell you that masculinity does not need to be redefined. It needs to be reestablished. We need to go back to our roots of what it means to be bold and courageous and assertive and capable and able to lead well and protect and serve our communities and family members. And it's my mission to do that. On today's podcast, I'm going to talk with you about a very specific element of masculinity, of being a man, and that is leadership. But I'm going to break it down into something that many of us don't ever look at, even outside of just that leadership. We hear a lot about how we're supposed to show up as being tenacious and bold and courageous and visionaries. And all of that is absolutely true. But there's also another element that is often overlooked, and that is our ability to have a level of emotional intelligence. Seems like every time I bring up the concept or conversation of emotions, men seem to tap out a little bit. Certainly we resonate with the idea of stoicism. We resonate with the idea of leading well. But when it comes to emotions, that's almost a swear word in a lot of circles. So I'm going to talk with you about that today and leading well, and specifically 5 key things or factors that go into you being the rock that you need to be for your family and your people. Now, before I get into that and before I go any further, and speaking of leadership and being the rock, I do want to introduce you to a company that I work very closely with. In fact, I just got off the phone with one of their marketing directors. This is Montana Knife Company. They are leading from the front in American manufacturing. Josh Smith is doing wonderful things along with his team in restoring American manufacturing in Montana by building 100% made in America knives. So if you're looking to have a good knife in your arsenal, your tool belt, and you want to support American manufacturing and American workers, then look no further than Montana Knife Company. And one of the things that's good about this, we see these docks being shut down and ports being shut down on the East Coast. They're not impacted by it the way other organizations are because everything here is made in America. So go check them out, montanaknifecompany.com, and use the code Order of Man at checkout. All right, guys, let's talk about this. At first, I was going to call this Emotional Intelligence 101, but again, I think we have an aversion as men to the idea of emotions, even just talking about them or discussing them. So rather than call it that, I want to talk about being the rock that your family and your friends and your colleagues and your coworkers need. And in order to be that stable rock or that beacon or that bedrock, whatever analogy you want to use, it's crucial that we learn how to control and harness our emotions, because that, to me, is probably one of our greatest threats when it comes to leading well. And I'll tell you why. If you cannot regulate and manage your emotions well, you are going to be prone to reacting to certain stimulus and environments and frustrations. And when you do that, when you react, which is more defensive than it is proactive, you tend to be more short. You tend to lose your calm and your cool and your patience. You tend to make bad decisions. And I think one of the greatest factors is you are creating a level of instability with the people that need you to be stable. If, for example, if you're talking with your children about issues they're dealing with at school or growing up, or if they're a little older, marriage and what to do for work and career aspirations, and they want to share things with you, but every time they come to talk with you, it's like you're bipolar. You're a completely different person based on these external circumstances. There's a lot of potential threat in that for them. Same thing with your wife. If you're so emotionally volatile and you're high and low and up and down and all over the place, she's not going to feel comfortable coming to you. Same thing with clients, same thing with teammates at work, same thing with your employer. The guy who is calm, cool, and collected at all times, regardless of what's going on around him, is the guy that everybody else is going to look to when things get difficult and challenging. You know, we're on the back of this hurricane that impacted Florida, North Carolina, Georgia, and other parts of the country. And I would go so far to say that there's a lot of men who probably completely lost their cool. And to a degree, it's understandable when you're in a crisis like that. But again, it's the men who stand up, who are convicted, who are bold, who can regulate their emotions, who don't freak out, who don't react. They can see a problem for what it is, and they can make a plan and start dealing with it in a very effective, mature, emotionally relevant way. So I'm going to break down 5 factors. These are often things that get overlooked as it pertains to leadership, but this will help you be more emotionally intelligent or be that rock for the people that need you. Number 1, it requires an element of patience. Too many men that I know are not patient. And guess what? Every time I look in the mirror in the morning, I'm looking at a guy who is not patient. I want things to happen now. I want them to go smoothly. I want the result of whatever I'm trying to accomplish to come as fast as possible. Sometimes, quite frankly, I get irritated and agitated by people who are, in a lot of ways, trying to help, but end up making problems worse. I lose my calm. I lose my cool. And it's really just undermining what I'm supposed to be doing as a man, which is to be patient with other people. So that's the first thing, is just learning to be patient. And how do you do this? Well, the first thing that you do is you got to give yourself time. I notice that when I am the least effective when it comes to communicating my thoughts and ideas effectively and in a way that that lands with people is when I'm pressed for time. It's when I have back-to-back appointments and when I'm freaked out about a deadline or things that need to get done, and I have no margin in my life to address things that come up appropriately. And I think you could probably attest to that as well. You know, for example, if I've got so many meetings throughout the day that I can't get all the work done that I want to get done, and then one of my kids comes to me and says, "Hey, Dad, can you take me to football practice? It's at a different time. It's an hour earlier today." Well, those are little minor frustrations. They're inconveniences for sure. But if you allow your day to get away from you and you have no space and margin, if you're like me, that's going to frustrate you. Sure, you'll do it. But in the meantime, you might make a comment or cop an attitude in a way that undermines the relationship that you have with your son. If your wife wants to talk with you about her day, but you're so consumed with yours because you didn't do it as effectively as you could, you can't be patient with her and sit there and actually listen intently to the things that she's trying to share with you. Guys, I'd take a deep look at your schedule and ask, where are you wasting time? Where can you cut out unnecessary meetings? Where can you be a little bit more efficient with the way that you're doing things? I had somebody call me the other day or message me, and they said they wanted to set up a meeting before we had another meeting with somebody else. And I messaged him back. I said, I'm not interested in that. We don't need to have a meeting to have another meeting. And that's just a waste of your time. It's a waste of my time. And I said it respectfully, but also I was very clear about it because I know I don't want to spend another hour that isn't needing to be spent on that, so I can focus and prioritize and put it somewhere else more effectively. So work on your patience. Have an empathetic heart. Be kind. And just step away from a situation if you notice yourself getting frustrated, so that you can be patient with people and also yourself as you screw up. Know that it takes time. Number 2 is awareness. You cannot serve people effectively when it comes to regulating your emotions and theirs if you're not aware of the things that you're dealing with. What frustrates you? What agitates you? What irritates you? When somebody does something quote unquote wrong, and I'm only using quotations because it might not be wrong, but you're just perceiving it that way, what is it that gets you mad about it? If somebody comes at you in a way that you don't appreciate, you feel disrespected, what story are you telling yourself about the disrespect? What stories are you using to excuse away your own performance? Who are you blaming all of your life's problems on? These are all factors of awareness. And the more that you become aware of the own internal struggles and dilemmas and challenges that you are dealing with, the more capable you are of helping people deal with theirs. I found through my own trials, specifically over the past couple of years, 2-3 years now, as I learned to afford myself some grace, I also learned how to afford other people grace in their lives. And that's what they need. Again, to go back to your children asking you to run an errand you don't want to run, or having a difficult day and needing to talk with you, or even just doing something dumb they shouldn't have done, like all kids and grown adults do. If you can afford them a little more grace through that process, you're going to build the relationship. Now, granted, there's a line. There might need some coaching or advice given. There might need to be some discipline that takes place. But the grace is what allows you to build and mend relationships that you might have been undermining for a year, 5 years, 10 years, maybe even 40 years with, a child or something like that. So really try to be aware. And the way that you're aware of what you're going through is just by asking yourself questions. I alluded to some of them. Why do you feel the way you do? Why are you mad right now? What is the emotion that you're experiencing trying to teach you? I would also really focus on being aware with other people. You should know when one of your people is having an off day. And I can tell the people who are closest in my life, I can tell that they're off because it's a deviation from their normal and typical behavior. And when that takes place, I ask them about it. Now, some guys will get very mad, like, I ask people, but they don't share it with me. They don't tell me anything. Well, maybe part of the reason they don't feel confident and comfortable sharing with you is because you have been so emotionally volatile that they're afraid of who they're going to receive. Are they going to get the nice, thoughtful, caring, kind, empathetic man that they know and love? Or are they going to get the agitated, irritated, frustrated, short, arguing, yelling, screaming kind of man that maybe they've seen too? So if you're trying to mend and repair relationships and you're trying to be the rock that people need you to be, it's going to take some time. I have some close personal friends and clients inside of the Iron Council who have been working on this for years and they're seeing very little results, and that's understandable. I try to be nice and appropriate with my wife and kids, but they still won't talk to me and they're still worried about things. It's like, well, you spent the last 10 years undermining everything that you're trying to do now, so stay with it. Realize it's going to take some time, have some patience, to go back to point number one, and be aware not only of what you're dealing with, but how they might be perceiving the risk associated with coming to you. And if you know, and you can be aware of other people's emotions, look, it's not your responsibility to change their emotions or to even manage their emotions, but I would think that you could agree that if we're supposed to lead these people, then we ought to be aware of what they're going through so we can help them navigate their emotions and their challenges well. Let's go to point number 3. I found that the most emotionally intelligent people, those men who can be the bedrock for their families and for their people, are the ones who are the most competent. When you're competent, you're also confident. You walk around with a swagger. You don't feel offended by every little thing. You don't feel slighted all the time. You don't feel like the world's out to get you. You don't paint yourself into a victim corner. All of those things are going to create some negativity. And of course, the way that you communicate when you're negative is going to be received that way by other people. But I found that the more competent I am, the less relevant so much other elements of my life become. The more competent I am, for example, with podcasting, the less relevant somebody saying I suck at podcasting is to me. I just know it's not true. Sure, it can sting a little and it can be bothersome, but I don't need to consume myself and get wrapped up with trying to defend who I am as a podcaster or try to convince them that they're wrong. I really don't have much of a worry or a care about that because I know in my heart of hearts that I am a competent man when it comes to certain aspects of my life. And that's what we should all be striving for. So I would ask you today, how are you working on your competency? And in what areas are you specifically trying to improve? If it's at work, maybe it's communication with clients. Maybe it's learning a software or program a little bit better than you currently know it. Maybe it's having a difficult conversation with your boss or making sure you guys get that assignment done and it gets delivered on time. Or maybe there's some networking you need to learn how to do, and so you buy a course on networking. There are so many different ways to improve your levels of competency that I can't even explain it because I don't know exactly how it's going to fit for you. But what I do know is that when a man is competent, he's confident. And when he's confident, he's less shakeable. He becomes unshakable by external circumstances that are bound to happen. All right, let's go to number 4, humility. A great leader is humble. Now look, we all have examples of what I would say, quote unquote, leaders who are not this way. They're horrible people. I would say that that's closer to tyranny or dictatorship than it is leadership. Leadership has a positive connotation, and a great leader is humble enough not to allow things to get to him, humble enough to realize that he makes mistakes and he falls short, humble enough to apologize and ask for forgiveness if he does fall short. And I found that a lot of men, and I've fallen into this trap too, a lot of men think that being humble in a way is like an apology, for example, or not knowing how to do something and actually just being honest about it, like, I don't know how to do that, is actually going to undermine your authority. I'm here to tell you it's not. It's really not. I've got countless situations, but I remember one in particular when I was doing my financial planning practice, and we were going through some different investments, and this was early on in my career, but going through some different investment options, and the client said to me, these are all great options, Ryan, and I really see the value in what you're talking about, but I'm really interested in this type of investment. And it had more to do with trading stocks and picking stocks, which is not something I was comfortable with, and I'm still not comfortable with today for different reasons. And they said, can you help me with that? And in a moment, I thought, well, yeah, I should say yes. I know all about that. I can help you with that. But that wasn't true. And so I decided instead to be humble and also be honest and say, I actually don't know much about that. So we can do one of two things. I can go back and I can learn, or I can bring somebody else to the table, a partner of mine, a friend, or a resource, and have them talk with all of us about those options. And that's what they had ended up doing. And this particular advisor ended up doing the business with them. Now, it would be easy to be frustrated, right? Well, that guy got the business. I'm the one who brought it to him. I didn't make any money on it. That's all selfish, but that's naturally what we'd think. Well, what I found out later, because of their actions, is that they then referred me to a half a dozen people for my wheelhouse. Now, if I would have lied to them and sold them some investment product I didn't know anything about, maybe it would have worked out, maybe it wouldn't. Maybe I'd get the referrals, maybe I wouldn't. But the reason I'm telling you this story is because when you're honest with people about your own shortcomings and your own deficiencies and what they might be dealing with, you are going to build trust and credibility. If you do that correctly, if you say, no, I don't know anything about that, but let me continue to help you by introducing you to somebody, then you're going to build that trust. Now they know. It's the same thing with being honest about a person's performance. I know it's very tempting to paint every scenario through this lens of the rose-colored glasses. I get it. You don't want to give negative or feedback to people because it might hurt, and it's going to hurt. Of course, if you're giving them criticism, it's going to hurt. But I'd argue that if you're in the position to give a person critique on whatever it is they're doing, whether it's personally or professionally, then you being honest about it, but still doing it from an empathetic way, but being honest about their lack, that's a person that can be trusted. Yeah, sure, they're not going to like it, but at least they know they can trust you to be honest with them. And if they can't trust you to be honest and sincere, I really don't know what else is worth having in a relationship. I think that's the foundation of any great relationship, is trust. And in order to do that, you need to be honest about how you feel and about how the other person is showing up. The better you do that, the more you build the trust and relationship with other people. And the last point that I want to make, so I've only got 5 today, but the last point that I want to make when it becomes to being that foundation, that pillar, that beacon or rock for your family, is to be responsive as opposed to reactive. So many people are continually reactive. And I said it earlier, being reactive is being on the defense. And when you're on your heels or you're back up against a wall, you're going to fight. You're going to fight against something you don't even need to fight against. Because sometimes we paint other people or outside scenarios as our enemy, and we back ourselves into a corner and we start fighting when there's actually nothing really to fight. Now, look, there are evil people in the world. There are fights worth having physically, mentally, intellectually. There's fights worth having. But I would argue that more often than not, the fight really isn't there if you learn to communicate effectively and you stop playing defense about everything because you're lacking competency. It goes back to what we said earlier. And instead, you're just so sure-footed. You're so secure with your base of who you are that you don't have to lash out and be upset and yell and hit people and things and do all the things that I've seen so many men do throughout their lives, some of which I have done. You know, yelling, shouting, berating, belittling. I've punched holes in walls. Just very immature boy-like behavior. We can't do that. You have to let that go, guys. And the way to do that, by the way, is when you notice your blood is boiling and the temperature is rising, and you'll feel it. I feel it. My heart rate beats faster. I feel myself physically, like my shoulders and arms, my fists, everything like tenses up physically. That's when I know I'm getting very, very agitated and very, very irritated. If I lash out in that moment, I'm being reactive and I'm undermining what I'm trying to do for people. And that is what leadership is about. It's about serving people, doing for others. When I feel myself in those moments, I exercise some patience, I give myself some margin, and I back away from the conversation until a later time. And that time is usually established. Because what a lot of guys will do is they're avoidant. They have these avoidant mentalities, so they'll back up out of the conversation and never get back into it. You have to get back into it, but you have to do it when your blood is not boiling. And the other thing I would say about that is when you notice yourself getting frustrated, seek to understand what the other person is experiencing, because it's likely they're frustrated too. I've had conversations just recently where there was some simple misunderstandings. I saw it one way, they saw it the other way, and I said something. I'm trying to be a little, I know I'm not giving you a great example because I'm not giving you the details, but I said something and the other person was like, well, that's not what I meant at all. This is actually what I meant. And then they said what they said, which I misinterpreted, and they said, well, that's not at all what I meant. So both of us were fighting over nothing. Fighting over what we thought we heard. Fighting over what we interpreted to be something that actually wasn't. So if you notice that blood is boiling, take a breath, get yourself out of the environment. When you come back into the environment and have that discussion, it's done from a calm, cool, and collected place, but it also comes from a place of understanding. Hey, help me understand what you meant by that. Now, that's not accusatory at all. It's not, well, you said this, and I can't believe how you made me feel. No, I don't really understand what you mean by that. Or when I hear that, I get frustrated. Can you help me understand what you mean, or can you elaborate? Give a person the benefit of the doubt. If somebody does something dumb at work, one of your subordinates, your employees does something dumb at work, rather than be pissed off and just immediately fire them or berate them in front of the rest of the workforce, bring that person aside. Hey, you did this. You knew what the task was. You didn't complete it, or you didn't complete it to standard. I'm not upset. I'm just trying to figure out where we went wrong. And give them the benefit of the doubt. And I would say this, maybe it was me. Maybe I failed to provide you the instructions that you needed to get this done. Maybe I failed to give you appropriate time to complete the project. Maybe I failed to connect you with people that you needed to be connected with. Maybe I failed because I didn't give you the proper training that you actually needed in order to accomplish the task that I gave you. This is Jocko's extreme ownership, right? I'm not going to take everything on my shoulders. They very easily could have asked me or asked for an extension or asked for a resource, but I can't control that. What I can control is how I show up. And so if that person says, yeah, you know what, Ryan, actually, you asked me to do this, but I never got trained on that. Okay, well, whose fault is that then? Why are you being mad at that person? That's my fault as the person who should have offered the training. So I dropped the ball, and what I did, because we react too often, is we put it on them, and then we dump all this extra baggage on them in addition, because they're guilty. They feel bad about not hitting the deadline. Most people would. So they're already experiencing some suffering, and then you just pour it on by making them feel lower or less than. It's not great leadership. It really isn't. And we all know that because we've all been subject to it, and we've also subjected others to it. Guys, we really, really need to focus on being just more calm, more level-headed. Some of the greatest men I know are the ones that you would never think a thing about. They're so unassuming. They almost appear passive in a way, and they're not. They're not. That's something different. But on the first glance, they almost seem as if they're passive. And it's not passivity. It's confidence. It's emotional maturity. They realize that they need to be the rock for their family or their friends or their colleagues, coworkers, et cetera, neighbors, community members, et cetera. And in order to be that, they have to be stable and bold and courageous and competent and aware and patient and all the other things that we talked about today. So my challenge to you over the weekend is ask yourself, and I would get out a journal or a notepad and just ask yourself, where do I fall short when it comes to being emotionally stable for other people? What can I do to improve it? What amends do I need to make with other people that I've been short with? And what specifically can I do today and moving forward to ensure that when things come up in life that are frustrating and challenging for me, I don't lose my cool and turn into a prepubescent little boy, but I maintain my frame as a man and I address what problems need to be addressed and I help other people get through and navigate their own challenges and hardship. That's what we should be doing as men. And that's how we established ourselves as leaders, in addition to other virtues that we have talked about in the past, but not today. I wanted to give you a different spin on it. So I hope that helps, men. Remember, we've got our partners over at Montana Knife Company doing great things, leading well, and building American manufacturing back from the ground up. In fact, I think they're breaking ground fairly soon on a brand new building in Montana. They had just built a building, and now they're building another one because they need it even bigger. So it's pretty incredible to see the work they're doing over there, and you're a big part to play in that. Also, go check out our website, orderofman.com. I say that because just this week, we dropped and released our newest website. It looks really good. It's easy to navigate, and I would love for you to check it out and give your feedback on it. All right, guys, those are your marching orders. We will be back on Tuesday of next week. Until then, go out there, take action, lead well, and become the man you are meant to be.